Firstly, I think very practically speaking, countries want less reports and studies and more changes and practical support in terms of capacity development, focusing on institutional capacities, on-the-ground action, and experience-based learning. And this kind of support needs to go ahead as a priority, practical support. And of course, there's the broader global discussions, the more scientific and technical discussions. But these are very complex, and it's important to remain pragmatic and not to get lost in the conceptual debate. Looking in terms of the institutional aspects, there are many entry points for mainstreaming adaptation into policy and planning processes, and these need to be assessed systematically to identify best opportunities. Within governments and other partners as well, in fact, there are different levels of understanding of climate change, different capacities to deal with the issue, different awareness levels between different sector ministries, and different institutional arrangements in terms of central coordinating and planning functions, finance functions, and the sector ministries. Perhaps in some cases, the institutional arrangements that worked well in the past need to be adjusted to take account of the complexities of dealing with very much multi-sectoral, complex issues such as climate change. Another important area where we're learning is at the subnational level. And we think there is a need to focus more on subnational level support, making the links with decentralization and local governance reform programs. And again, to emphasize again the need for more integrated approaches, which are very important at the local subnational level, just the same as at the national level. And here one can pick up a few areas where there needs to be, which should be part of any investment or any intervention at the local level. And these include policy alignment, looking at national climate change and subnational governance policies, and making sure that there's proper alignment between national and subnational policies. Capacity assessment and development should be part of any intervention, improving local government understanding of climate change issues and strategies, and having a capacity development strategy at the local level. Financing arrangements, there's a whole complexity of windows for financing, both through the public investment program of the country as well as through the funds that are available internationally. And at the local level, there's a need to experiment and test new financing arrangements. For example, climate change grants for local government are being tested. And then looking at the systems and processes, ensuring that local planning and finance systems can deal and integrate climate change issues into their day-to-day work. And then very importantly, and again I heard it from the sum up from yesterday, ensuring that that we target those most vulnerable to climate change, and that we ensure that there's participation at the community level in decision making, and to make sure that the local democracy does work for the poor and does help them address their vulnerabilities and improve their resilience on climate change issues. The final lessons that we're learning, I think are to do with aid and development effectiveness. This also relates to a meeting that was taking place here in Bangkok earlier in the week. And it's very clear that countries are concerned with both the quantity and quality of climate change funding. That there is a proliferation of global funds, and there's a burden of requirements for change and additions in institutional arrangements, monitoring, reporting, financial requirements, financial tracking requirements. And these funding arrangements can undermine the very capacities that need to be developed for effective climate change responses at the country level. So what can we do in terms of addressing some of these concerns from partner countries? And I think here we need to go back to the Paris Declaration on Aid Effectiveness, which has provided a set of principles and benchmarks that can be used to strengthen approaches to providing external sources of finance to country-led development processes. And this was discussed and confirmed at a meeting of a number of countries from the region earlier this week, as I mentioned, with officials from environment, finance, and planning met together and called for greater efforts from their own governments and the development partners to apply the Paris Declaration principles to public sources of climate change. I think just to leave with a couple of final observations, that adaptation to climate change has to have a human face, since it has the potential to significantly affect MDG outcomes and needs to be built into overall public investment and development planning. And just to let you know that this is one of the central themes of the upcoming Asia-Pacific Regional Human Development Report on climate change, which will be released by UNDP next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nicholas Rossellini, Regional Director of the Regional Bureau for Asia and the Pacific, the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP. None of us here, I don't think anyone here doesn't know and hasn't heard of the UNDP, but a lot of us perhaps are not really sure what they actually do, and I think now we've been told and shown, and also your take, having the UNDP take on climate change financing and adaptation, mainstreaming adaptation into development planning. Thank you, Nicholas, very much. Could I ask the panelists for the next session to come up to the stage, please? Our main theme for this forum, as we all know, is mainstreaming adaptation into development planning. Our question this morning until 10:30 is, why adaptation mainstreaming? And there might be those who even question this word mainstreaming. So we are hoping for a inspirational and exciting debate, and that includes your good selves. And as I said from the beginning, we are wanting to keep this as informal as possible. So again, feel free when the speakers have said what they have to say, and I am hoping that our speakers will keep themselves to a sort of 3 minutes, so there will be plenty of time for you. They laugh, they laugh. I'm going to be tough on them, they haven't realized. I would also like to take the opportunity to let you know that you really have to be here the whole day today, if, in case you had thought not to be. I'm sure you hadn't, but if you had, please don't think that way, because we do have a very, very nice surprise for you during the closing plenary session starting at 5 o'clock today. As it is a surprise, I can't say anything more than that, otherwise it won't be a surprise, of course. Good morning, everybody on the stage too. Yes, very good. Good to see you. I would like to ask, I'm going myself up to the stage. I think that's a very good idea to start with. And I would like to introduce our provocateur, who is Mr. Joey Salceda. And he is the governor of Albay province in the Philippines. And Governor Salceda is chairman of the Regional Development Council V and member of the National Food and Energy Council in the Philippines. He has principally authored 9 laws and was previously presidential chief of staff. And again, Joey, if there's anything wrong here or anything you want to add, just do it. You have only, well, no, you as provocateur have 10. You as provocateur have 10. He is also the chairman of several committees in the House of Representatives. He is a member of the Council of Advisors, League of Provinces of the Philippines. He has previously worked as research director of the Swiss Bank Corporation and ING Bearings. Governor Salceda has received numerous awards in his roles as both analyst and DRR champion. He's been named as one of the top 100 most powerful Filipinos by BizNews Asia. We have no idea of who we have in our midst today, and he's actually in the top 5 of that 100, I have been informed. And the UN ISDR has appointed him as a new global senior champion for DRR and climate change adaptation. Governor Salceda is known as the Philippines' green economist governor. I've understood that he's a very controversial person there too, which is all the more reason to welcome him here this morning. Governor Salceda, thank you very much, and please go ahead.
You have to switch that.
Yeah, there you go. That's it.
First one. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Stuart. Well, let me just start with this. This is Typhoon Maggie. Essentially, 72% of the response was local, and only 18%. In short, I think this was the strongest typhoon of the Philippines in 4 years, but essentially, we were able to control the number of casualties to only 19 through effective local response. 72% of the climate response was local. So I guess I'm trying to start to provoke how local. So let me go through my assignment, which is really to ask questions. Adaptation to what is becoming clearer, but adaptation for what is always lost in the conversation. Adaptation is an instrument for development, for MDGs especially. Climate change makes MDGs tougher to attain if adaptation is not mainstream. On the other hand, adaptation is only a means. MDGs are its ends. The most compelling reason for mainstreaming is the structural bias and built-in focus of adaptation on the vulnerable. Adaptation provides strategic clarity to development, but MDGs give meaning to adaptation, make it socially desirable. So the real issue is the vital link between MDGs and adaptation operationalized by the development strategy? Or is adaptation still either that last chapter on contingency analysis to the main body of a medium-term plan, or a persistent footnote to every chapter? The essence of adaptation is to allow development to proceed in the midst of rising climate risk. It is an investment in development. If risks do not materialize, then it builds capacity. If they do occur, then it results in less economic damages. Since it reduces risk, adaptation should increase long-term economic returns and enhance social welfare. The second argument for adaptation, mainstreaming, is its significantly no-regrets content. Adaptive development reduces the need for reconstruction. Conversely, recovery and reconstruction must be pursued in the context of and provide feedback to the development strategy. In short, less adaptation means more reconstruction means less adaptation. I think it should be the other way around. In other words, less adaptation leads to more reconstruction. The third argument for why mainstreaming is that market mechanisms to support adaptation are still emerging and evolving. Institutional inertia among dominant incumbents, whether public or private, despite vociferous pronouncements. Adaptation mainstreaming compels new imperatives be ordained into state policies and new institutions be built. The issue is, can retrofitting existing institutions do the job? Conversely, can new institutions gain enough traction and capacity to meet the challenge? The biggest question to me really is, who is in charge of adaptation? Is somebody in charge of adaptation in every government? Given the primacy of local governments and communities in adaptation, have local capacities been mobilized and strengthened? How localized are programs and projects? How prepared are governments in mainstreaming? What are the mistakes that need not be repeated? And how do we manage the knowledge for adaptation, especially for community-based macro and meso at all levels of governance? The fourth question. Adaptation costs money for higher specs and redundancy and takes away resources from other priorities. Sadly, those who have more in risk also have less in resources. The more vulnerable, the less capable. Worse, well, the world easily forked out $4 trillion to save the banks, but could only promise $30 billion for adaptation in Copenhagen and $40 billion for MDG in New York. To save human lives and humanity, well, it's better to save the eggs, forget the birds, and forget the nest. The fourth argument for adaptation mainstream is that it compels sustainable resource mobilization, and mainstreaming will direct the current momentum behind adaptation be optimized to push the overall development agenda. The Question: is the budget for adaptation specific, incremental, and dedicated?